I would love to introduce every single one of you. So the lady that's going to start is the lady that got me into cycling probably about 10 years ago. And she is a force to be reckoned with, is all I will say. Mahnoor Sultan Campbell, she's up first, and I will let you chat to her. So your mic is on, and please keep your questions right till the very end. So we'll have all of our panelists, and then you'll have a Q&A session. Mahnoor, over to you.
Good evening, ladies. Is this audible? Yeah. It's straight, right? Okay. Thank you very much, Shagufta, for that introduction. Sets up a very high bar. I will try my level best. I, as opposed to other people, I am first generation in Scotland. I came here as a student, got married, settled down, was brought up in Pakistan, and I think to understand my journey to cycling, it's important to understand the society that I was brought up in and grew up in. Very gender specific, girls don't ride bikes. As a child, we were 3 of us girls, never had a bike. My younger brother got a bike, the prince got a bike, we didn't. I don't hold it against him. That doesn't sound like that. But anyway, so the other thing was that, you know, as we grew up, we were taken everywhere in a very protected environment in cars and things. So you never even missed something that you didn't think was important or a part of your life. Why would you need a bike? Because you're taken everywhere. Grew up with that, learned how to drive a car, drove everywhere, loved it. I was a designated driver in my family. I would take the car anywhere. So, I mean, never felt the need for it. But lo and behold, came here to study, got married, settled down. I remember we've got 2 boys, and it was the year that I turned 40. And our oldest son suddenly said one day, let's go cycling at the weekend. And I went, there's a bit of a problem. I don't know how to ride a bike. That came as a shock to my son, who was about 10 at that time. And he just said, what? You don't know how to ride a bike? Because as far as he was concerned, everybody knew how to ride a bike. And I was like, no, I don't know how to ride a bike. I said, I'll tell you what. Your dad and the 2 of you boys, I'll take you wherever you want to go riding. I'll sit and read my novel, and I'll come and pick you up from wherever you're finished. No, we all want to go. And I'm like, I don't know how to ride a bike. So that, and it wasn't my choice. It was just an idea that was planted in my head. And having watched enough Bollywood films, I had this romantic notion of I would be on a bike, wind through my hair, and, you know, gently going somewhere, and it would be so fantastic. Excuse me, cycling was very, very different from that. So my husband took me to a caravan park, hired a bike, and he said, all you do is sit down and roll. It's not that simple. All of you who have learned as adults know it's not that simple. An hour later, I had an extremely sore bum, extremely embarrassed, because everybody from every caravan was giving advice on how to ride a bike, and the one thing that I could not do at the end of the hour was ride a bike. So I swore I would never let him teach me again. I then was like, will your friend who's a welder make me stabilizers? And no. I'm like, okay, fine. How do people learn? Do you have driving instructors, cycling instructors? And he was like, no, everybody learns as a child. And I was like, oh, for goodness sakes, man, there's got to be some solution. And that summer on STV News, there was a news item of an organization called Cycling Scotland that was teaching pensioners how to ride bikes. And it just happened that all the group, the entire group, was white, blonde-haired ladies who were over 60, who had not learned how to ride a bike as a child, and were like, this was brilliant, this was absolutely fantastic. I was like, see, somebody teaches. I just jumped up and down. Of course, this is pre-Google era. You know, you didn't have computers that sort of did things like that. Everybody didn't have a smartphone. So I was like, I have to find this organization, Cycling Scotland. They do lessons. Found Cycling Scotland. Now, those of you who have learned through organizations like Bike for Good and other organizations are very lucky because of all the CCF funding at that stage. And this is going back a number of years. At that stage, you had to pay for a lesson, £25 for a cycling lesson, and you had to have a bike. I don't know how to ride a bike, so how will I have a bike? So anyway, hired a bike, hired a helmet, got my first lesson. First lesson in Glasgow Green on a Saturday morning with a high-vis jacket that says, under instruction. Everybody that was rolling out of the pub was like, hi, Hen, I'll teach you how to ride. And I'm like, no, please. Anyway, by the end of the first lesson, I could pedal. By the end of the second lesson, the instructor said, go and practice. And I was like, go and practice? I don't have a bike. Where will I practice? I mean, somebody will knock me down. Anyway, generosity of people around me. I had a colleague who said, of course, my excitement, I was telling the whole world I was learning how to ride a bike. So a colleague of mine said, I'm tearing down my garden shed because we're building an extension. So will I give you my bike? And I was like, yes, please. Another colleague said, how will you transport it? I don't know. He said, I've got a car and we've taken down the seats because I was taking my daughter's stuff up to university. I'll help you transport it. Oh, thank God, people are so generous. So that was it. I got a bike, bought a helmet, and then I was like, how will I do this on my own? So asked my husband's cousin, who had a bike, who lived in the next street, will you come cycling with me? I live one street away from the canal, the Forth and Clyde Canal. And he said, yeah, come on, come down, I'll take you. My house is 1 mile from Loch 27. It took us 45 minutes. Every dog, every child, every pram, everything that came, I got off my bike. He was livid. By the end of that hour, his patience had run out, and he was like, never again. Never taking you cycling again. I was like, fine. But then on, I was left to my own devices. Every day after work, I would get on the bike and I would go cycling. Learned to ride. Decided I would take my son and the children out cycling, and we were all going to start doing things. Practice, practice, practice. So that was when I was 40. The only route I knew that was safe. I wasn't going to go on the roads. My husband wasn't going to take me on the roads. It was like the canal. So we went everywhere that the canal would take us. Bowling Basin, Falkirk Wheel, you name it. We did distances. And then my husband said, why don't we do a big ride? Loch Katrine. The Forth and Clyde Canal is flat. Has everybody ever gone to Loch Katrine? But that's how the rest of Scotland is, hilly. So I learned that I only had 5 gears on my bike. That doesn't do much for Loch Katrine. Lesson learned, continued practicing. And then I was like, let's do something else. What am I going to do with my cycling? And so then there were charity events, and I said, let's do a sponsored ride. We'll participate in a sponsored ride. And I took part in a sponsored ride. Of course, asking everybody to sponsor me meant that all of my friends found out I was cycling. And next thing, their children started pestering them. If Auntie Mahnoor can go cycling, why can't we go cycling? And their mothers were the same story. Don't know how to ride a bike. I'm not going to ride a bike. So I became Pied Piper. Everybody would say to me, Mahnoor, will you take our children for a bike ride, please? Yes, sure. So I took the children along for a bike ride, and the mothers sat there. They fed me, which was great, So, and after doing a number of those sponsored rides and things and taking children and doing all of that, we then did Friendship Club because I belonged to an Islamic school, and they said, oh, we do a children's club, a friendship club. Children are all asking for you to come and teach them cycling. And I was like, oh, folk are finding out. So we got asked to do that. Once we did that, the mothers got interested. Oh, can we not have cycling as well? We don't know how to ride a bike. And of course, Al Mizan, like other organizations, got CCF funding. And the ladies wanted to ride bikes. Oh my God. Yes, we got the funding. We got a person who was going to do the job, but we had objection from husbands, we had objection from fathers, we had objections from the organization, Islamic clothing, people shouldn't be dressed like this and people shouldn't be doing that, and you ladies. We taught a number of hundreds of ladies and children and taught them cycling, but every time we went out for a ride, safe cycling, cycle routes, every time we went out and crossed a road, one of my friends would call me and say, my husband said he saw you on the road. Yeah, I can't be invisible, but I have to be seen. It's perfectly fine. But then we had our first puncture. And I was like, oh, what do we do now? Are we going to walk everybody home? And I'm quite technical. I like to get into things. I like to tinker. So I took myself on a course to learn how to do puncture repairs. And I learned a wee bit more and started tinkering about, serviced my own bike and felt on top of the world, serviced my husband's bike. And he was just like, are you really sure you know what you're doing? Of course I do. I have been on a course and I can do this. So started tackling more things. The more I did, the more confidence I gained. I became a ride leader. I became a cycle trainer and just started doing a lot more. But then it was like, I'm still on cycle routes. How do you get further? And I found somebody who used to do story bikes. Unfortunately, he has passed away, but he was a storyteller and he used to organize lead rides. So we went on this lead ride, and the first lead ride I went on and I said to him, so how do you get from Bella Houston Park to Milton? And he said, oh, we'll go this route and that route and we'll do this. And I'm like, that's a road. I've never cycled on a road. And he said, don't worry, stay close to me. And it was an all-ladies group with a male ride leader. And I was like, hey, all-ladies group. I do not know how to do a road. I will stay close to him. But then I learned, oh my God, there are things like designated cycle routes, quiet roads, and you can cycle. And then I went home and said to my husband, come on, I'll take you to a place you haven't been there before. And it was just that, going with a group, having somebody show me the route, and then come back and take other people. And it just grew from there. I think one of my other very big challenges was the fact that I suffer from something called fibromyalgia. For those of you who haven't heard about it, it is a weakness of the muscles and the tendons, and extremely painful. I spent an entire year in my last flare-up. I spent an entire year not being able to ride a bike, 10 minutes on my bike, and I would have flopped over my handlebars. And I was like, I've got to do something about it. So I bought myself an e-bike. And oh my God, it was amazing. It gave me the freedom that I didn't have without it. But I also got taunted because I was on an e-bike. I was called a cheat. People thought that you had to be over 80 to be on an e-bike. I didn't have any right to be. But you don't know what's going on in my body, what my barrier is. So anyway, continued to do that, battled health and other things, and then went into touring. I was going to do a multi-day ride, more than one day. But there is an Islamic ruling, you don't do things like that alone. So I always go out cycling with my buddy. We have done a few tours. We have been 2 of us, we have been 4 of us, we have been 7 of us, and we have stayed overnight, and we have gone further afield. It has been amazing. But I think I'm going to do one last thing. If you fall off your bike, do not let it stop you. I had a major accident 8 weeks ago. I came off my bike. I was in high dependency for 2 days. But I was allowed to get back on my bike in 3 weeks. I'm not allowed to get back on my car for 6 months. So my freedom, my saying my freedom, otherwise I'd be stuck in my house waiting for somebody to take me. I am cycling everywhere. I came on my bike and I will go back on my bike. And I hope that I always stay on my bike. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mahnoor. I've known Mahnoor for years, and I mean years, probably going into a decade plus, and I learned a few things tonight as well. And for those of you that know Mahnoor, that was just episode 1. Episode 2, 3, and 20 are coming on BBC iPlayer very soon. So, our next panellist is over here, and it's a lovely lady at the far end called Francine, and she's looking at me with wild eyes because I didn't actually tell anybody which order I was going to do this in. So Francine I've actually only just met this evening. Our lovely Ailey brought her here, but she volunteers at Freewheel North. And when she sent me her picture for our promotion, what I noticed was her dazzling smile holding the loveliest pink bike. Over to you, Francine.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. And thanks again for your invite and for hosting me tonight. And I'm going to be brief. I'm not going to write a book like you, Mani. But I will summarize what I have been through and what is my journey to cycling. I was born in Africa, specifically in Burundi, and my parents were against to see women cycling. So I was one of the 10 children and the youngest, or my brother could ride a bike, but I have never get a chance. My dad gave me everything I wanted, but no, don't ride a bike. It's for boys and men. So my mom was from Rwanda, and then we moved in Rwanda, and the genocide came in, and then I was obliged to come to Belgium and stay and do my studies over there. When I was in Belgium, I started to think, I can see every family, I can see friends going on bikes and enjoying really the social and go out. And I say, that's something I would have loved really to see the whole, my family going together, going to enjoy our company and have a picnic outside the middle of the nature. And so I said, I would love to learn how to ride a bike. But because I was really busy with my studies and I couldn't get a time. I finished my studies. I decided to move in Glasgow just for job hunting. I did biomedical sciences and specialized in human nutrition, and thought, oh, if I come in Glasgow, I will get a job. Coming here, I kept thinking there is a dream behind me. I like cycling, but I can't cycle. What can I do? So I stayed here for a while before I can know how really I can go through to learn how to ride a bike. My boy, when we came here, he was almost 2 years, and then when he was 4 or 5, bought a bike, he started to ride a bike, and then was thinking, that's a shame, I have never get the time really to go out with my parents. And I would love to go out with my boy to ride a really bike, like your own experience. And then I just decided, let's start to learn how to ride a bike. But I was new here, knowing nobody who had a bike, and then I couldn't afford to buy a bike myself. I have a part-time job, and then I have to look after my child as well when he was out of school. So I just said, I wait until I get an opportunity. When my son was 8 years old, he went cycling Glasgow to Edinburgh with friends of mine who were doing a lot of cycling with him, going out to Millport. And I was saying, I wish I could go, and often I would go in a car and follow them. They will go by bikes, and I will meet them by car. I was thinking, that's not fair. And when he went to Edinburgh, I was really feeling bad, not jealous, but bad, thinking, if I knew how to do it, I could go with him and with my friend and be together. And then 2 years after, I met someone from Urban Roots who was starting to teach how to ride a bike to adults. I said, wow, I can join really the group. And that's how I started, but it was like a 12 session, and I was so slow, I didn't manage to get through for the 12 sessions. And I stopped because then I had other commitment, family commitment. I did get a job which was quite demanding. Then I stopped. And a few years after, then that has been almost 10 years. Then I consistently really learned properly how to ride a bike through Freeway North. And that's really, I decided I needed to go through and do it properly and know how to do it. And once I had know how to ride a bike, then I was enjoying it. I started to think I need really to help other women who are struggling. Now I have been trained as a coach, training, riding, teaching how to ride a bike, and I have been trained as well how to lead a ride. I have been through Play Together on pedal trainer. And then now I have really enjoyed the training people how to ride a bike. And the nice experience I have been through recently, I have been teaching like 7 women from women of color, and just the lockdown. And how did I meet them? I was riding a bike in the park, and I met those women, and they will stop me. Oh, can you ride a bike? And I say, yeah, I can ride a bike. Do you want to learn? And they say, no, we don't have a bike. No, I know where I can get a bike. So I will grab them, I will say, let's meet to Freeway North on Sunday, and I will teach you how to ride a bike. Just for the lockdown, 7 women from 25, one, and the other one were over 50s, and all now are riding the bike. And the good news as well is I am really good thinking if you teach a child how to ride a bike, they will not get all the struggle we went through. Now I am starting to teach children through Play Together on pedal, and my first session will be next Saturday.
Thank you for that, Francine. That was really, really lovely. What I'm hearing from the 2 panelists is they got into it. They didn't just leave it at that. They want everybody else to share in the same kind of passion and joy that everybody else is experiencing. And that's really, really lovely to see. Okay, moving on. Thank you very much, Francine. Moving on, let's have Asma share her story. She's wildly shaking no at me. Asma has serious nerves, but she's got a lovely story. So Asma has been cycling with Ailey for quite a while. And I don't think I have been on a bike ride with Asma, but recently she cycled for fun all the way out to Loch Lomond. Off you go, Asma.
Thank you. I'm not good speaker, I'm sorry. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Yeah. I came from Bangladesh, yeah, and the society has some barriers to cycle. But when I came this country, I got Ellie from community center, and actually it was my dream. It was my dream if I can ride bike, yeah. And when I came Ellie, I thought it's my dream come true now. Yeah, I took the chance. Yeah, and yeah, she is very good teacher, and she taught me well. We ride bicycle in the park and road, how to ride bike on road, and yeah. Okay, thank you.
Now, audience, I told you to be nice to Asma. What have you all done? She's got the nerves. Well, you can have a chat to her, hopefully, afterwards, and we will do some Women of Colour bike rides, and hopefully Asma will be a lot more talkative then. Okay, fantastic. Let's pick somebody from this table now. We'll not pick somebody as nervous, but let's go with somebody who maybe hopefully isn't as nervous. So we have Tamzin in the middle. She's just sitting super quietly. So Tamzin, I have only just met recently, although we've been chatting online via email for a while. I'm probably going to get this wrong because I didn't write this down. So Tamzin is an active travel development officer for Cycling UK. Recently in that post, and that's how we started engaging, but inspirational to say the least. Tamzin, over to you.
Thank you. Let's just hope. Can everyone hear me? Is that on? Nice. So yes, I'm Tamzin, as Shagufta has introduced me, and hopefully I won't forget who I am. So I've got these cards here, so I'm just going to put them there. I hope no one minds. So I'm just going to give you a bit of background about myself. So I was adopted from China when I was 5 or 10 months old. No one's really sure how old I was, but that's where I'm from. And as you can tell, I did not grow up in China. I actually grew up in Cornwall, which is, for those that don't know, it's as far south as you can go in the UK. So I'm just learning tonight just how big a privilege it is to learn to ride a bike when you are a child. And I was very fortunate to, as a child, learn to ride a bike. Unfortunately, I did not take that on. Cornwall's a very hilly place. That's going to be my excuse. So I delayed my cycling journey, really, until I went to university, which is where I picked it up again. And I picked it up because I was inspired by a friend of mine, not a woman of colour, but a woman who I saw cycling every day. She beat me to university every day. That was my main motivation. It's just so much faster and more convenient to use a bike to cycle and to travel. So that's where I picked it up again. I also got involved with the local clubs and my university club, which is where I didn't know it at the time, but which is where the barriers started to come in. When you are the only woman of colour, you are possibly the only woman within those clubs. You do feel a little bit ostracised, a little bit on the edge. But at the time, I was quite ignorant of that fact. But I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. I also... Again, I didn't know. I also started launching my career into cycling. So I started working in a local bike shop. I cannot recall, I was trying to think earlier, I worked in that bike shop for 2.5 years, every Saturday, and I do not recall seeing a single woman of colour walk through the doors. And the same with my university clubs. I can count on one hand the amount of women of colour I saw attempt to even come to those clubs. So... yeah, and then after I left university, I then started working in the university as a cycling officer, which is where I found my passion for trying to inspire more diversity and inclusivity, not only in cycling, but in active travel in general. And not only for women of colour, but for all other marginalised groups, because they're all interconnected, and I really think we can all help each other. So during my time there, I founded the Switching Gears Festival, which brought together, one of my speakers was Nina McKenna, so you can kind of see the caliber that I'm working with here. So I brought together people that were of minorities, that hadn't felt included by cycling, and the stories that they told, it's really telling. Where universities are such diverse places, we should see some reflection of that diversity in cycling, and we're not seeing it. So that is where my passion for active travel and increasing inclusivity and accessibility in that has come from. I'm also an aspiring ultra-distance cyclist, and earlier this year I was selected as part of a scheme to increase people of colour in ultra-distance cycling, which I don't know if any of you follow ultra-distance cycling, but it's a very, very white man sport. So they basically selected 3 people of colour to take on the challenge of training for and then undertaking an ultra-distance race. And that came with its own challenges and barriers, which I'll move on to in a minute. Unfortunately, I broke my leg earlier this year, which prevented me from taking part, but I still learned a lot. So in terms of barriers, I'd like to just preface this by just saying that these are my individual barriers, and obviously we are sometimes lumped under the same umbrella, but obviously we all experience these barriers in different ways, and we're all very different. Like, we can't be put under one umbrella. That does kind of annoy me, but anyway, that's another conversation. I also feel like I do come from additional position of privilege simply because of my upbringing and the way that I speak and the way that I act. I do gain more acceptance from that, I feel. So these barriers, I'm going to keep it kind of short. So first up, the lack of representation, especially in sport cycling, and in particular my interest, ultra-distance cycling. So I think growing up, I only really saw, during my cycling journey, I've only ever seen one Asian pro cyclist, and I remember following her with quite an intense attitude, and I didn't really realize why, but then I realized it's because she inspired me to think that I could maybe do the same as her, and it isn't just a white woman's sport like pro cycling or even just undertaking challenges. The second barrier that I faced has been feelings of increased exposure and vulnerability, and you're recognizable as a woman of color in a world where women of color aren't prevalent. So from that, you can feel increased pressure. So whenever I go on group rides, I feel like I have to be good, or people are just going to remember me as that Chinese girl who can't cycle, or, you will be remembered as well. So I think turning up to spaces where we aren't the majority, it can be quite difficult because you do feel like you will be remembered, and you do feel like you are under the spotlight, so to say. And I felt that particularly during the ultra distance scholarship. People were watching my journey, they were watching me for 7 months, and I felt like if I failed, then that would be a reflection of all women of colour. And that wasn't the scholarship's intention. The scholarship was aimed to promote women of colour and people of colour, but that was an additional barrier, and it could be an additional barrier to anyone who wants to get into that side of the sport. The second one is my perception of safety. So I feel like I stand out on the roads, and sometimes I have been picked out when cycling through cities. So obviously, I tend to cycle quite far, and I tend to go through a variety of places. And people have shouted things out of cars at me. I mean, they tend to anyway, even if I'm just walking on the street. But when you're on a bike, it's a different, scary kind of feeling, and that's something I don't think a lot of people understand. So yeah, when I do cycle into cities, I do have my sunglasses down, I do have my buff up. You know, it's an interesting sort of perception of safety. And then the other barrier, this is the final one, I will stop talking in a minute, but the final barrier that I feel like I face is a lack of knowledge and acceptance of the issue. So in my work as an active travel officer, I often have to persuade people that there is an issue, and I found that mostly in the Switching Gears Festival when I was trying to fund it, when I was trying to get people together. One of my conditions for the Switching Gears Festival was that all the speakers were to be paid, because too often minorities are taken advantage of and expected to speak for free on their behalf. But getting the funding for that was really hard because people didn't accept there was an issue. They didn't think it needed to be funded. The research hasn't been done because people don't believe it's an issue. Yeah, it just creates this whole different problem at another level. And I think I'm going to finish there because the rest of my notes don't make any sense to me right now. So, yeah, thank you.
Goodness, what a story. And I think I have just met somebody who can speak faster than me. So I bow for that. Tamzin, that was truly inspirational. I must admit, I'm quite lucky. I haven't massively experienced racism in my life, and particularly on a bike, so I'm always really disheartened to hear when other people are, and I've got a lot of my cycling buddies are in this room, and unfortunately it is very common. And but the more women of colour, the more ethnic minorities we get cycling, the more we normalise that this society, this place, this roads, these cycle paths, all of these belong to all of us. So on that same note, Sajda's going to think that, do you know, I'm doing one table each, I'm going to move to her. So just to mix it up, I'm not. I'm going to move over to Rabaha. Now, Rabaha actually needs no introduction because she's been a cyclist very, very recently, but she is so passionate about cycling that she has been on TV, she has been on radio, she has been in press. I feel I need to take her autograph. So Rabaha, over to you.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me properly? Okay, big disclaimer, I'm a bit nervous and anxious despite all the media appearances, so just bear with me. So in terms of starting my cycling journey, I'm not really as experienced a cyclist as any of the other panelists. So it only started early this year, and it was I remember it as one of those good things that came due to COVID. And it was just that I had arrived in Glasgow for my PhD studies, and I was here in Glasgow earlier on. So all those years in between, I was really looking forward to be back in Glasgow. And once I landed here, I had to be in quarantine for 10 days. And those 10 days were the hardest for me because I would look out the window and all I wanted to be was out in the city that I had missed so much all these years. And I couldn't. And then one day I noticed this lady who would cycle up the hill, and she would park outside my accommodation. I was living in Hull, so I presume that she must have been working, but I hadn't met her because I was in quarantine. So it just came one day I noticed, and the next day I noticed her, and then it became a thing that where I would be. I know it sounds creepy, but but I was kind of looking forward to her arrival, and in those moments, she represented the freedom I felt I didn't have, and it was just in those days, like I started Googling, okay, where can I learn to cycle? And I'm somebody who didn't have a cycle, like when I was growing up, like my only cycling experience was on a tricycle, and I wanted a bike, but like, you know, like sometimes things don't work out, and then you grow up, and I was like, yeah, like too old to cycle until this moment. And I remember in my Googling, I found Bike for Good, and the other branch, not this branch, because that was like closer to my place. And over there, like what I really liked was that they provided all the stuff. So the bikes, the helmets, and all those like new hobby gear that you need. So I didn't have to like make any investment in that. And most of all, I think like it was one of those things which was still open in like COVID era. So I was like, okay, and I booked the lessons, and I remember like Gail got back in touch to me, and she was like, yeah, you can start your lessons as soon as you are out of quarantine. And that's how it began. And in terms of barriers, I would say, yeah, like I grew up in Pakistan, so the idea, like, because I am like, depending on the city you are, sometimes, yeah, like in Lahore, girls do cycle, but that's more of a recreation thing. Like, you might do that in a park, but never on road or anything. And also, it's not really considered the goal, you know, like, because it's just not, like, over here, there is more cycling community, and the cycling itself is looked at in a very positive way. But back home, like, it's not cool to cycle to be like, it's just like as simple as that. So I think like my barriers were mostly like, you know, the kind of barriers you are facing inside than outside, because I was like super lucky that I had support available over here. My instructors were really encouraging, but like, you know, like, because I get anxious over little things, so I had like issues like, am I too old to cycle? Like, is everything wrong with my body? Because like, what you do is like when you are learning to cycle, and this is something like lots of you who have learned as an adult may find like that you didn't know before. Certainly for me, I didn't know that like you don't get to train with the training wheels. So they give you just a bicycle, and you have to learn to balance first rather than the like paddling. And I was like, okay, that's not gonna happen. And there were days like I would Google, is one of my legs shorter than my other leg? Is like, am I too like fat for it? Like, is like my body like proportionate enough like that, like I can balance properly? You have no idea. Like, if somebody checks my Google history from that time, like they would be like, this girl is going crazy. And I literally drove my instructors crazy. Like, I don't know like how they like were like so patient with me. Because like there were times like I would ask questions like, like, do you think it would help if I just like go to exercise bike and learn paddling over there? Because I was one of those people like who had like 5 lessons and I still couldn't paddle. And my instructor was like, no, like the exercise bikes, they work differently. So don't worry, everybody learns in their own time, so it will come to you. And I was like, yeah. And inside my head, I was like, they have no idea. And for one time, I also thought that I should order a bike with training wheels, learn it secretly on training wheels, and then just wow my instructor in the next lesson. And thankfully, like, yeah, like it's really difficult. Just in case like, somebody is thinking of doing that, it's really difficult to find an adult-sized bike with training wheels on, and also training wheels that are discreet, because the ones I saw like had these like really huge training wheels, and I was like, okay, that would be way more embarrassing than like learning. So yeah, I think a lot of my barriers were in my head, but I felt like it's important to mention that, because if you're learning it as an adult, there is this added pressure that you are doing something that kids can do. And yes, it's exciting at a personal level, and you have this sense of achievement, and of course you're learning something new, you are enjoying it, but at the same time, you are in competition with, let's say, 3 years old, and it's not really like that, I would say, motivating at times, where you are like, okay, everyone can cycle and it's just me who is struggling. but I guess I think that's where really supportive instructors come in handy, because I think if I was just learning on my own, if it was one of those things, I would have given up way earlier, because I would be like, no, this is not really something for me, and I would be okay with that. But my instructors were always like, no, you can do it, and they would find little things to encourage me. I remember I still have that written in capital in my diary, when my instructor said, you have good balance. And to be honest, when you are a PhD student, you have way more good things, but at that point, just somebody saying I have good balance, that felt such an achievement, because I was like, okay, something is still happening and happening right. And I think one really good thing was also that during the quarantine, not many people were out during the COVID, and Calvin Way was because I was learning in winter, so there weren't many people on Calvin Way, so I learned, and it was just and since then, I think this was one of the things, because at that time, my only motivation for cycling was for fun, just one of those things you want to learn, and also maybe, I'll go to uni, I'll go to shop, and I'll stop taking Uber. Sorry, if somebody from an Uber representative is listening to this. So I was don't want to ruin all my budget on taking Ubers. So I was thinking, cycling would be better. But actually, it's after learning to cycle that I want to do more fun things on cycle apart from the everyday commute. And I was telling her, one of the things, and this is something I really want, all the people, who manage all these, cycling things and teaching cycling, that, sometimes I think, a lot of focus is on cycling as a commute, and it's good for environment, and people enjoy it, but at the same time, cycling for fun should be encouraged more as well, and kind of doing, I know it sounds crazy, but I really want to learn things stunts on bikes, Danny McCaskill. So it's just maybe some lessons for that should be there as well. I know Bike for Good is doing some, so just in case anyone also has these ideas. But and also I think I feel much more confident, even though it doesn't seem right now, but yes, compared to my previous self, I feel much more confident, and also it's really good for just your mental health, and just being and also if you're a new person in the city, sometimes you may not have too many friends, but when you have hobbies like cycling, you get to meet more people, so you get to have a community around you. But also it's one of those sports, if we can use the term, that you can just do on your own and be happy. So everybody, please learn to cycle if you don't know.
She says she was nervous. I couldn't see any of that at all. Thank you, Rabaha. Rabaha is right. She is a very recent recruit to cycling. But when she had a couple of lessons, my colleague Glail, who she was getting lessons with, sent me the most amazing story. I mean, normally we do case studies and we have to extract information from people like pulling teeth. And Rabaha wrote this big blog about how it had changed her perception and how she'd been sitting, looking through an open window, looking through a window during quarantine, looking at people cycling. And do you know what? It was lovely. And it was us that was telling Cycling Scotland and other organisations, and that's why she's so famous, because her story is lovely. But it just shows that she's got so many barriers as well. And you know, there's been so much focus on cycling recently. I can't see into the audience, but this is Q&A time. I'm really sorry we've overran just a little tad. But if you've got questions, this is your opportunity to ask any burning questions of our panellists. Don't be shy. And if you've raised hands, I can't actually see you. But Lorna's in the back with another mic, and I think there's a raised hand there.
One knows London has a reporting scheme where you can report incidents. I want to know if anyone in here knows if Scotland has something similar, because I ride with cameras on my helmet and on my bike, because I'm a very nervous rider and I won't allow anyone to stop that happening, stop me from cycling. But if I'm come across people that are really bad behaviour, who do I report that to? Because Scotland, the police are not going to take it, and if I've got evidence to show this, you know, I just feel like, if anyone knows anything about that, how we can do that, or?
Tamzin, off you go.
So actually, something that Cycling UK have been campaigning for is the use of an online reporting system for the police. So I think that very soon there will be a trial where you will be able to upload evidence to this site, and then Police Scotland will then look at it for you. I'm not sure when it's coming into effect, but I think it has been announced as part of the government's plans. So that might be worth looking into. For other incidents, I'm sorry to say, I don't know, but if any other panellists have any idea, then.
Lorna's coming to you.
Hello, guys. I don't know how my sound, but this is my first time I am asking how you are dealing with clothes, especially you are Muslim, and like I have been cycling for 2 months now with Ili, and sometimes when we go out, I don't know what to wear. Sometimes I say I will wear black so it not shows, but it's very big problem, like especially for Muslim girls. They don't know how to wear hijab with like short, and you know, you have to be like, because the people, they will see you and they will say, you are Muslim, you are doing cycling, and you are wearing something is not properly. So what do you think, guys, like you are doing?
I'm just going to... I still wear my Pakistani shirts. I've just got a black pair of trousers because actually at the start I ruined quite a few of my cream coloured trousers because I've got grease on them. So it was just like black was safer. So I've then stuck with black trousers, but they're baggy, so they still conform to my understanding of Islamic requirement of wearing loose clothes. I'm wearing my ordinary shirt. I just wear my ordinary shirts. I wear jackets over them. Hijab is still there. Helmet fits on top of it. I think I am decent and I am properly covered, and that's how I do it. Can I just add that Shagufta is being very shy just now, but that's how Shagufta rides her bike, in an abaya. So our presenter, that's how she rides all the time. So, and again, like Sajda said, yes, it's a personal preference, but I think when you're asking from an Islamic perspective, the lycra-clad body does not conform to that. And I'm not passing judgment on anybody else, but I'm just saying from an Islamic perspective, if that's what you have in mind, then you know you need to have loose clothing.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask the ladies that wear the abayas while cycling, do you both have a step-through bike then? Is that not easier with the longer garment?
Does everybody know what a step-through bike is? Fantastic. Baji Mahnoor, would you want to?
About you?
I don't have a step-through bike. Mine's is like a normal bar bike. There's a bike kindly displayed over there, just like a high bar, and I wear that. I do have specific cycling wardrobe, and the only reason for that is I destroy everything. You should see my cycling trousers and leggings. Everything's got grease on them. Everything's got holes in it. Everything is torn. But, you know, that's it. I don't care how I look. Okay, any other questions?
Can I just make a comment regarding her, you know, your trousers and stuff? If you want to wear loose trousers, oh my God, this is amplifying. If you want to wear loose trousers, you get these things, elastics that you can tie around. Yeah, one of those. You can get those. You can get them. It's so easy. And if you're wearing loose trousers, you just put them on the cuffs. That's what I did today when I biked. I just put that kind of like ribbon thing. You get them on eBay, you get them on Amazon, and you just stick it around. And that helps with any loose trousers, any kind of loose fabric. It's so much easier.
Really handy.
Thank you. Any other questions?
It was to the first speaker, you talked about falling off your bike, you know, and that can be a hard thing, and people then don't get back into it. Yeah. So one motto I always have is, a setback is a setup for a comeback. So I think it was great what you said to everybody about get yourself back on. You only took a few days or whatever it was, but I think that's good advice for us all to not worry. But I'd like to know more about how you were feeling and what made you get back on your bike.
I think I would have got back on my bike even earlier than the 3 weeks, but the 3 weeks was a medical dictate because I was told by the doctors that I could not ride a bike for the first 3 weeks. I think I've been very lucky in the sense that I had what's called an absence, so I have a lack of memory of just from before the incident, of the incident, and for quite a bit after it. So because I don't remember anything, I have no fear of that incident. Having said that, that was not my only incident. I did fall off a bike when I tried the clipped pedals, broke an arm. And again, I wasn't allowed on the bike while the arm was healing and the bone was healing. But literally from the day I was allowed back, I was like, I'm getting back on. So what if I broke my arm? It's been healed. I can get back on. And I think it's just that sort of saying, that's not the end of the world. That's not going to stop me. Do I love my bike? Does it give me what I want? Yes, it gives me the freedom. It gives me the companionship, it gives me the mental health, it gives me the physical health, it gives me this cold wind in my face, and to be able to say after a long, hard day of work, oh man, I can let all my worries blow away. So that was a bigger aspect of it that actually helped me just get back on my bike. And I think for now it's been, I personally think after this particular incident, I think people around me are more anxious and concerned about me than I am about myself. I'm like, I've promised everybody, including my husband, I will choose cycled routes and I will stay safe and I will not go into heavy traffic. That's my promise for now, because there's nobody with me.
To the point where I was actually a little bit worried today when she was an hour and a half late. And Mahnoor is very punctual. And I actually said to Lauren, I said, I'm scared to phone her and ask her just in case she's had a wee topple. Okay. Any last questions? Okay, well, thank you for a lovely event. And we have one last request before you all shoot off. Anila would like us to kind of gather a little bit closer together and not on our chairs and maybe get a selfie. If you wish, if there's anybody that doesn't want to be part of that, please let us know. But it would be lovely just to have one group photo of everybody together. And maybe our IT tech team can help us organise that. I know there's some professional photographers about. Have they gone? Oh, goodness. We've talked that much, we've bored them into going home. But we've got lots of phones. We can do something. But thank you very much for coming to the event. This conversation is only just beginning. Thank you for everybody that fed back. I have all your contact details. So we will keep in touch with you about everything that we're going to do on the back of this.